Introducing David from Stealth Moose.
Hello.
Gear grind up. Hello, David.
Hello.
Will you kindly show us some of your guitars that you play in Stealth Moose?
Yeah. This is my main guitar that I use. 2001 Les Paul Classic. I use this pretty much everything. Any other guitars are basically just sort of backups to this. It's got Sir Aldrich humbucker in the bridge, Sir Thornbucker in the neck, and a Mojo Pickups wiring harness. But apart from that, it's stock. Yeah, and it is by far my favourite guitar.
Cool. And what guitar do you have on standby?
My backup guitar, generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, and sometimes I don't even have a backup, but generally it's this one, which is 2016 Les Paul Classic Custom Light, very thin body. This has got the same pickup configuration and wiring harness, so it's basically identical electronics. It's a nice guitar. I don't like it as much as that one, but it's still pretty cool. Sometimes this one, generally all our songs are in drop D, but this one sometimes I'll leave in standard tuning for one of our songs, All Out War. So occasionally, instead of retuning for that one song, I'll grab this one instead. But yeah, it doesn't get used that much live. But these are the main two live. 95% of the time, it'll be that one. Just if I fancy a change or something, I'll pick this one up or something like that. But it's very, very rare. So yeah, those are the two main guitars.
Cool. Moving on through the chain, how about your effects pedals?
Where do you want to start?
Let's start at the beginning of the chain.
Right. Well. Signal goes from the guitar into the board either via Audio Technica wireless or through a cable, through an an AB switcher. So I can obviously use that as a mute, or if like the wireless goes down, I can go over to the cable and plug that in very quickly. Then from there it goes to Boss NS2 noise suppressor. And then from that, there's a loop on that. So in the loop of the noise suppressor is Digitech Drop, Sir Koji Comp, and also DoD Looking Glass and Exotic SL drive. The Looking Glass and SL drive are actually in loops controlled by a gig rig remote loopy, which is mounted underneath the board, and they're controlled by the Decibel 11 switch doctor, which controls all the effects and also the amp that we'll get to. The compressor also has a jack on it, so that you can switch it via like a amp sort of channel switching sort of jack, which this also does. Actually no, this controls a Voodoo Lab control switcher, which is mounted also underneath the board, which then switches that. Between these two and these two, there's also the Line 6 M5 multi-effects, which I use the tuner on there for two reasons. Number one, it's actually quite a nice tuner, and number two, because I ran out of space to have a dedicated tuner on the board. And I also use it for pitch shifting and a bit of tremolo. That is controlled via MIDI through the switch doctor and also through the Cellar Quartz V2. What that does is you can set up information on there for each channel, for example, different colours and information. What it also does is you can set it up so that when it receives a particular MIDI message, it will send out a different MIDI message on whatever channel you want. So because the M5 only has 24 presets, and obviously in MIDI you normally go from 0 to 127, it allows me to have more than 24 presets to use on this. Then it goes to the amp, and then from the amp effects send comes back into the board, comes back into the decibel 11, and there in the loops of that is the Strymon El Capistan delay, TC Electronic Hall of Fame Mini, and the Earthquaker Afterneath. I also have the El Capistan set up to switch favourite. It's got a favourite function, so you can save a delay and have another one, you know, on the controls, and that's set up to be switched by the Voodoo Lab control switcher. But I only ever use one setting, which are the ones that are shown with the tape. Hall of Fame Mini, that is on all the time unless the Afterneath is on. It's just a standard Hall effect, just to give a little bit of depth to the sound, and then the Afterneath is like a really complex reverb. You get some really sort of like dark, sort of cavernous kind of atmospheric stuff with it, particularly with these two together. I'll either use those two together or those two together, and then it goes back into decibel 11, back to the amp return. Pedals that I use all the time, as I said, that one's always on unless the other reverb's being used, and the Koji Comp is always on for clean sounds, and so is the Looking Glass, set to a kind of like a very, very light overdrive, so it brings it from a very, very clean, sparkly sound that the first channel of the amp set up as, to give it just a little bit of edge, and the rest of them are just used to taste, really. Yeah, so that's the pedal board, really.
Okay, let's move on to the amp.
Right, this is the most important part of my rig. You know, I could get away with playing any old sort of like humbucker guitar or, you know, effects, but I couldn't do what I do without the amp. This amp, it's diesel D-Mol, 100 watt 3-channel head. It's controlled by MIDI by the floorboard, so like with one press of a switch I can change channels, I can open and close the effects loop, I can engage and disengage mid-cut function or second master, and change any pedals on there. So it just makes it really easy just to have one foot switch to do everything at the same time. And I have the clean channel set up very clean, and then the Looking Glass just to give it a little bit of edge. The second channel is kind of like an overdriven sort of like rock sort of tone that I don't use too much in Stealth Moose, and then channel 3 is a more sort of compressed, fatter kind of sort of like modern metal sort of tone, really, and that goes into 1B12 cab with a Celestion, what is it? It's a G12H 150 redback 150 watt speaker, so by itself it'll quite happily take a pound in your head all day and all night. It's quite a neutral sounding speaker. It's not kind of doesn't sound like a vintage 30 or anything like that, which I do like vintage 30s. It's more of a kind of a neutral sort of speaker, so it's pretty good for all applications, really, and because of its power it'll take anything, really, and it's just nice and compact to use on stage and sounds good. So that's pretty much it, really. Other stuff, I suppose. Strings on Gibson scale length guitars. I always use Elixir NanoWeb 10 to 46s, Dunlop 88mm green Tortex picks, Straps on these two guitars are right on straps, which I really like. Found them a few months ago and they're fantastic. I really like them, and they're cheap as well for what they are. They're really cool. I think that's pretty much it, unless you've got any other questions you want to know about.
No, that's quite a comprehensive run through of your rig.
Cool, thank you. There's other guitars that I use in the studio. We often double track and quadruple track guitars. I often use a Strat or a semi-hollow body or something like that, along with the Les Pauls. But live it's always Les Pauls, and like I said, 95% of the time it's that one. That's my Desert Island guitar, that one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, David from Stealth Roots.